Hello and welcome to Chapter 6. I'm going to review the chapter problems with you, and I want to make sure that you're very careful to know that you're going to have different values. For example, in this first problem I'm going to work, you're going to have a different standard deviation than I have, so your answers are going to come out different. So don't just take the answers that I get on this video and plug them in to your assignment, because they will all be wrong, but you can definitely follow along with me using your values to work these problems. And so the first question that I was given has to do with sampling population, and it's telling me that 33% of taxpayers with adjusted gross income between $30,000 and $60,000 itemized deductions on their tax returns. And it's telling me that the mean deductions for these taxpayers is $16,642, and that the standard deviation is 2,380. And it wants me to determine the sampling distribution of the population mean, which is what that means, for taxpayers with sample sizes of 30, 50, 100, and 400. So looking back at your text that you should have read by now, you learned about sampling distributions of the population mean, and we were given a formula. And if you were to work the algebra on this first equation, you would see that it equals the second equation. And so we will use this equation just because it is parsimonious. It's simpler, it's easier. And so going back to my worksheet here and my question, I have put the formula here to follow it, and again that's my mean and my standard deviation. So the first thing it asked me here was, what is my expected population mean? Well, don't get tripped up, because that's almost too easy of a question, because it gave it to us right here, so I can just put that value there to answer that first question. And now here I'll simply plug in this equation, which will be equals my standard deviation divided by the square root of my n is my sample. And it makes sure that you always follow how many decimal places that it wants you to have, or you will be getting answers wrong and it'll drive you crazy. So again, I can work these problems down the page and say, okay, so for 50, it's my standard deviation divided by the square root of my population, or I'm sorry, my sample. Small n is sample, big N is population. So again, I would work these two problems the same way, and then it's just going to ask me what happens when the sample size gets larger. And so I'm going to leave that one for you to answer, because you can figure that one out. In question 2, I'm told that 38% of primary care doctors think that their patients receive unnecessary medical care, and it does want me in this problem to round my answer to 4 decimal places. And it says, suppose a sample of 300 primary care doctors was taken, show the distribution of the sample populations. So in this problem, we are asked to determine the standard deviation of the population proportion, which you read about in the text this week, sampling distribution of the population proportion, and we were given the formula here. So I've just put that on the spreadsheet to help us work our question. And so they're telling us, suppose that we have a sample of 300 doctors. So for 300 doctors, what is my sample proportion? Okay, well, this is easy. to determine. We are told that 38% believe their patients receive unnecessary medical care. So my P in this case equals 0.38, which is my 38%. So to get my NP, I'm going to multiply my N, which is, you know what, let me do this because I'm going to give you this spreadsheet and I want you to be able to click and see what formulas I used. So let me do this. So let me say my P equals, we said 0.38, and my N, which is my sample, equals, in this case, we're going to say, I'm going to move this down, okay? Sorry, just hang in there. This is to help you later. My N's going to equal 300. I'm going to move that over a little. Okay, so my NP is going to equal, and I did that to be able, so that you could click on this cell later and be able to see exactly what I did. So my NP is 114. And so my N times 1 minus P is going to be equals my N times 1 minus P. It's going to be 186. And my estimated P was already given to us. And then my standard deviation of my population proportion is where I'll plug this formula in. So I'm going to say equals the square root of P times 1 minus P divided by N I made a mistake on that formula. Okay, let me see. Let me figure out one mistake. Okay, I see my mistake. I should have said times right here, and I let the bracket do that for me, and it shouldn't have in that case. And remember, it wanted me to go with, to report 4 digits. So I'm going to make sure I've got 4 digits there. Okay, then it asked me, suppose there were 500 primary care doctors. So I still have the 0.38 for my P because 38% of 500. So I will work this exactly the same. And then I will say N times, remember to put that in there, or you end up with an error like I had, 1 minus P, and then my estimated proportion is the 38%, and then to work this formula one more time and get it right this time, equals the square root of all of this, so P times 1 minus P divided by N. And again, I need to make sure that I do this to 4 digits. And so you'll do this again for 1,000. And then it will ask you to make some determinations based on what you got in this chart. So that is all that we were given this week for sampling distributions. So I will end this video here and pick up on question number 3.